Picture a cupboard, a real one, the kind you'd shove old coats into, the kind under the stairs where things go to be forgotten. Now make it the size of a modest parking space, maybe 12 feet across, maybe 10 feet deep, roughly the dimensions of a large bathroom in a decent modern flat. Now put 8 people in it, not visiting, not temporarily displaced, living, permanently, inescapably, generation after generation living in that space. Add to it the smell of 8 bodies that have never once in their lives had access to a bathtub, the smell of a coal fire that vents poorly and leaves a black crust on every surface, every morning, every day. The smell of a bucket in the corner that serves as the family's toilet overnight because the shared privy 3 floors down is almost always occupied, often overflowing and genuinely dangerous to visit after dark. The smell of damp wool, never quite dry. The smell of food that's borderline. The smell of sickness that never fully leaves. The smell of walls that weep moisture in winter and grow things in summer. Now add 6 other families on the same floor doing the same thing, in rooms exactly like yours. Add 4 more floors above. Add the family who runs a tallow rendering operation in the cellar, because they have nowhere else to do it, so the whole building sweats with the stench of boiled fat and animal scraps at all hours. That's Whitechapel. That's London in 1857, not the London of Dickens' galas and Great Exhibition pride, not the London of top hats and railway expansion, and the confident roar of the world's first industrial superpower. The other London. The London that makes the first London possible. A place where you could watch a man die of cholera on a Tuesday and be back selling flowers on the same corner by Thursday, because what else are you going to do? We're going there tonight. Not as social reformers with notebooks, not as journalists slumming for the story, not as tourists craning their necks at the misery of others. We're living it. One day, one family. Everything they would have seen, smelled, touched, survived, and somehow endured. I make these history stories, and I genuinely do not know if you listen to fall asleep or if you're just someone who needs the company of another voice in the dark, thinking about people who had it worse than you. Either way, I'm here, you're here, get comfortable. You're about to become very uncomfortable. Here we go. Your eyes open before dawn. Not because you're rested. Not because your body has decided it's had enough sleep. You haven't had enough sleep. You never have enough sleep. You have had, at most, 4 consecutive hours of something approaching unconsciousness, interrupted twice by the baby on the other side of the room, and once by the sound of the couple upstairs conducting what sounded like either a violent argument or vigorous intimacy. Genuinely impossible to tell through the floorboards, and frankly, you've stopped trying. Your eyes open because of the cold. It hits you every morning like a physical thing, like someone has lifted the one thin blanket that covers all 3 of you and replaced it with the outside air. Because essentially that's what's happened. The fire in the grate burned down around midnight. Nobody got up to tend it because nobody had coal enough to waste on the small hours, and now the room is the temperature of the street, and the street in February is the temperature of a decision you should not make. You're pressed against your sister on the left. She's 9 years old and sharp-elbowed, and she radiates heat like a small furnace, which is the most useful thing about her at this particular moment. On your right is the wall, which is damp. You can feel it through your dress. You sleep in your dress. You'll be wearing this same dress for work in approximately 20 minutes. There is no separate concept of night clothes at your level of the social order. The wall is always damp. It has a particular texture. This wall, a sort of soft, yielding quality in certain spots that you've learned not to touch directly. And if you hold a candle close, you can see the grey-green fuzz of it. You're 13 years old. Your name is Eliza Marsh. You have lived in this room your entire life, and so have your mother and most of your siblings, and your father for the last 11 years, since he came down from Leicestershire looking for work and found your mother instead. The room is, and I want you to understand this precisely, the room is the size of a single car parking space. A large one, perhaps, but still. 8 people. 1 room. No exceptions. No overflow. Nowhere else to go. Your parents sleep in the actual bed, which is a wooden frame, a straw mattress that has been restuffed so many times the straw has given up any structural ambition and lies flat as earth, and a horse blanket they've owned for 7 years. The blanket smells like a horse. It will always smell like a horse. Nobody mentions it anymore. Your 2 youngest siblings, the baby Tommy, 14 months, and your brother Francis, who is 3, sleep in the bed too, one on either side of your mother, tucked in like parentheses around her body. Your mother sleeps like a woman braced for impact, which is essentially accurate. You and your sister Agnes sleep on the floor on a straw-stuffed sack that was a proper mattress once. It's been patched 4 times. The patches are made of whatever was available. Your oldest brother William, who is 16, sleeps near the door on a heap of coal sacks. He did, for a brief period of ambition, try sleeping with his head toward the window for the fresh air, until he realised that the fresh air in this building is a relative term, and a cold draught is not better than coal dust. He moved back. Your other brother Robert, who is 11, sleeps wherever William doesn't. 8 people. 1 room, 12 feet by 10 feet. Welcome to Whitechapel. Welcome to 1857. Welcome to the East End of the greatest city in the world. The first thing you do every morning, the very first thing before anything else, is check the fire. You ease yourself off the mattress, trying not to wake Agnes, who sleeps with the ferocious purpose of someone who knows sleep is rationed. The floor is bare boards. Your feet find a familiar path that avoids the worst splinters and the particular board near the window that flexes under weight and makes a creak that wakes the baby. You've been navigating this room in the dark for as long as you can walk. Your feet know it the way your hands know your own face. The grate is cold. Not just cool, cold, dead. The coal's a grey heap of ash with no ember hiding underneath. You crouch down close to it anyway and cup your hands around the ash. Nothing. The fire has been out for hours. This is a problem. Coal costs money. Coal costs money you don't have, because money is a substance that passes through this family's hands like water through cupped fingers, never staying, never quite enough. Your mother buys coal by the half bucket from the coal merchant 3 streets over, who charges more per unit than the wealthy families pay for full cartloads. That's how poverty works. Everything costs more when you can only buy a little at a time. The poor pay a poverty premium on absolutely everything, every single day, and nobody who could change this seems particularly motivated to do so. You know where the coal is. There's a small wooden bucket next to the grate with maybe, you tip it toward the grey light coming through the window, maybe enough for 1 fire, a morning fire. If you're careful, if you use it slowly, it'll get the room warm enough that the baby stops crying and your mother can feel her fingers well enough to start work. You build the fire the way you've been taught since you were old enough to be trusted near flame. Ash raked back. Smallest pieces of coal first. paper twisted tight. There's a half sheet of newspaper from 3 weeks ago that's been saved precisely for this purpose, for the moment when kindling is scarce. You keep a small piece of flint and a bit of iron on the shelf next to the salt tin. You've struck a fire so many times the motion is as natural as breathing. The spark catches the paper. The paper catches the smallest coal. You lean in and blow, careful and steady, the way your mother showed you. Not too hard, not too little. The smoke rises up your nostrils, sharp, mineral, carrying the chemical memory of 1,000 previous fires in this room, every fire you've ever lit in your entire life, leaving its trace in the blackened brick of the chimney above you. The coal catches, a small yellow flame, tentative at first, then committed. You stand up. Your knees ache from crouching on the boards. You're 13 years old and your knees already ache. The room comes into focus as the fire grows. I want you to understand what this room actually contains, because I think when people say a room, they picture something recognizable. Walls, a floor, a ceiling, furniture arranged with some logic. This room is not that. The bed takes up roughly 1/3 of the space. Against the wall opposite there are 2 wooden boxes, not furniture, just boxes salvaged from somewhere, that serve as a table surface during the day and storage underneath. On top of the boxes, a tin bowl used for washing, a jug that holds water brought up from the pump yesterday evening, a small paper packet of salt, a stub of tallow candle melted onto a bit of broken plate, a tin mug with no handle, a metal spoon with a bent neck, and a small wooden box that locks, which contains everything of value the family owns. You don't know exactly what's in the locked box. Your mother knows. Nobody else is supposed to ask. Against the wall by the door, a row of bent nails holds the family's clothes. Your father's good coat, the one he wears when he needs to look for work, a dark wool coat with 2 buttons remaining out of what were originally 4, hangs at the end. Next to it, your mother's shawl, a large square of grey wool that has been hers for longer than you can remember. That smells like her, and like the smoke of every room she's ever stood in. Then the children's things, layered on top of each other, a spare dress that belongs to whoever needs it, a pair of boys' trousers with rope for a belt, stockings hung out to dry and still damp. The floor has no covering, bare boards, dark with accumulated grease and coal dust, and the residue of years. In the far corner, the one furthest from the door, there's a large bucket with a wooden lid on it. The lid is there for obvious reasons. Nobody looks at the bucket directly. It is a Victorian social contract. The bucket exists, it serves its function, and everyone in this room practices a collective pretense of not noticing it. The smell is, I want to be accurate here, the smell is not one thing. It's strata, it's geology. The bottom layer is damp. This building was constructed in approximately 1820 by a builder who had no particular interest in whether the walls kept out water, and in the intervening 37 years the water has made its case repeatedly and won. The ground floor floods in heavy rain. The walls in every room carry a permanent watermark, a tide line of old moisture, and in February the walls of the upper floors are cold enough that the moisture in the air condenses directly on the plaster, runs down in slow translucent lines, collects in the gap between the floorboard and the skirting where it does the things that moisture does when given time and no ventilation. Above the damp, coal smoke. The grate vents poorly. On bad days, still days, days when the air outside doesn't move much. The smoke fills the bottom half of the room and everyone's eyes run. The walls near the fireplace are coated with a black, slightly greasy film that you no longer try to clean because it comes back within days, and the attempt costs energy that is required for other things. Above the coal smoke, 8 people, their breath, their bodies, the baby's nappy, which is changed when your mother has time and clean rag enough to manage it, which is not always. The smell of yesterday's food, grey meat bought cheap from the cook shop at the end of the day when it was going soft, boiled in water with a heel of bread, still hanging in the air like a ghost. And underneath all of it, seeping up from the floors below, from the cellar where the tallow operation runs, rendered fat, hot grease, the sweetly awful smell of animal fats being cooked down into something useful, candles, soap, the smell of an industrial process conducted in a residential building because London in 1857 doesn't have a concept of zoning, and the man who runs it, Mr. Hensley, pays his rent on time and therefore exists in a state of perpetual landlord-approved immunity. This is the smell you wake up to every morning. This is the smell you go to sleep to every night. This is the smell that is so deeply embedded in your clothing that when you walk through the better streets of the city, people edge away from you slightly. Not meanly, necessarily, just reflexively. The way you'd move away from something that made you worried. You don't smell it anymore. You stopped smelling it years ago. This is your nose's final mercy. Your mother is awake. She's always awake before you. You don't know when she sleeps, honestly. You've never caught her in the full abandonment of deep sleep, the way you've seen Agnes sleep, the way William sleeps on his coal sacks with his mouth open, and no awareness of the world. Your mother exists in a state that appears to be a lighter version of consciousness at all times, like a guard dog that is never fully off duty. She's at the boxes already, her back to you, doing something with the jug and the bowl. Her hair is down. She'll pin it up before anyone comes to the door before the day properly begins. In the morning half dark, with her hair loose, she looks younger than she is. She's 31 years old, your mother. Her name is Sarah. In the right light, with her hair down, you can still see who she might have been. Far's going, you say, keeping your voice low. The baby's still sleeping. The baby sleeps until he's good and ready, and not one moment before or after, which is the only sovereignty Tommy has over his life. She turns. She has a cloth in her hands and she's wiping the inside of the tin bowl with a kind of efficiency that comes from doing something 10,000 times. Good girl. Fetch the water before your father wakes. The water, right? The water jug, the one on the boxes, holds about 1.5 pints. There's a small amount of greyish water left at the bottom from last night. Your mother tips it carefully into the bowl, reserves some in the jug for the morning tea. For everything else, you need fresh water. This means the pump. And I want you to understand what the pump means, because when I say fetch water from the pump, your brain probably pictures some vaguely pastoral scene. A village well, maybe, pleasant morning light, a bucket, not much of a hardship. That's not what this is. The pump is at the end of Flower and Dean Street. It's a street pump serving approximately, at the current census, 400 people. 400 people drawing their water, doing their washing, watering whatever they're trying to keep alive from one pump. It runs for a limited period of the morning and another window in the early evening. The rest of the time is either dry, broken, or so backed up with waiting people that the queue stretches half the street. The water it pumps is, in charitable terms, Thames water. In accurate terms, it is water from a source that receives the drainage of a city of 2 million people. The Metropolitan Commission of Sewers has been doing its best since 1848 to reform the situation, and we're now in 1857, and the best has so far been insufficient. The water smells of the river. It carries things in it that you can sometimes see if you hold it up to the light. Dr. John Snow, just 3 years ago, proved that the cholera outbreak in Soho was caused by contaminated pump water. He removed the handle from the Broad Street pump, and the outbreak stopped. This was a significant moment in the history of medicine. Nobody told your neighbourhood about it. The pump on Flower and Dean Street still runs. You take the large bucket from next to the grate, not the one in the corner, the other one, the clean one, and your coat from the nail by the door, and you go out. The stairs. The stairs of your building are a navigation problem every time. There are 5 floors and a cellar, and the stairs are narrow and dark, and the third step from the bottom has been broken since before you were born and will, with absolute certainty, be broken when you die. You skip it without thinking. Your body has the step pattern memorized the way it has the room memorized, by absolute necessity, by the impossibility of unlearning what you need to survive each day. The ground floor corridor smells strongest of tallow. You hold your breath through it, a habit, not an effective one, but the pretense of holding your breath is something outside. February air hits you like a door, cold, wet, carrying the smell of the street, which is to say, carrying the smell of several thousand people, and their horses and their dogs and their waste, all mixed together with coal smoke from 100,000 fires lit in the grey London morning. It is technically outside air. It is technically better than the air inside. Technically, the street is already moving. It's not yet 6 in the morning, and Whitechapel has been awake for an hour at least. A man pushes a handcart piled with bundles, leaning into it, his breath rising white in the cold. A woman in a dark shawl walks quickly with her head down. From somewhere to your right, a costermonger already setting up the first of the day's voices. Watercress! Fresh watercress! You join the queue at the pump. There are 7 people ahead of you already. An old woman who lives 2 buildings over, a bucket in each hand, waiting with the patient immobility of someone who's been doing this every morning for 40 years. A girl about your age from the floor above who you don't know well. 3 boys who look to be there for a family without enough adults to spare. A man with the raw red hands and careful stance of someone who spent last night drinking and is managing this morning with great deliberate effort. The queue moves slowly. When it's your turn, you fill the bucket and then fill the smaller jug you've also brought. Your arms take the weight of it. Full water is heavy, heavier than you'd think until you've carried it. The bucket handle cuts into your palm through your thin gloves. You've got calluses there from years of this that mean you barely feel it anymore. You make it back up the stairs without spilling more than a little on the broken step. You set the bucket down inside the door and stand for a moment with your arms hanging, letting the muscles unclench. The room smells like the fire now, on top of everything else. Cold smoke and the first edge of warmth. The fire has caught properly, and the stones round the grate are beginning to hold heat. Tommy's still asleep. Agnes has rolled over and pulled the coat they use as a second blanket up over her face. Your mother takes the bucket from you without looking up from what she's doing. She has, in the time you were gone, produced from somewhere, the locked box probably, or a cache known only to her, a small amount of tea. Not real tea exactly, A mixture of used tea leaves dried out and reused and mixed with something else, something greyish that you've been told is dried herbs and choose to believe, but it's hot and it's dark and it has the chemical ghost of tea in it. The tin mug is on the grate, the water from the jug heating. Your father'll want some, she says. Not a question, an instruction. Your father is awake. Your father's name is Thomas Marsh. He is 36 years old and looks 50. He's a broad man. He was a broad man anyway once, when the Leicestershire fields made him, and the working days were outdoor days and the food was something more than scraping. He still has the shoulders of that man. But there's a quality to him now, a particular kind of hollowness, the look of a man whose body has been worked hard and fuelled poorly for too many years in a row. He's a labourer. General labourer is what he tells anyone who asks, and this is accurate in the sense that he will do almost any physical work that someone will pay him to do. Hauling, digging, carrying, loading, demolition when buildings come down, construction when they go up. He knows how to lay a paving stone. He knows how to shift rubble. He knows how to move a barge's cargo from the hold to the wharf with the particular rhythm that saves your back over a long day. What he doesn't know and cannot control is whether any of this will be required of him on a given day. This is the central terror of your family's life. Not any particular disaster, not one bad thing that happened. The terror is instability. The terror is not knowing, from one week to the next, whether your father will work 3 days or none, whether he'll earn enough for the rent, for coal, for food, or whether he'll earn enough for 2 of those 3 things, and which 2 it will be this time. This morning he gets up from the bed with the particular careful movements of a man who woke 2 hours ago and has been lying still since, thinking, and who now has to convert thought into action. He's done this every morning you've watched him. He lies still in the grey before dawn, and you can't tell if he's sleeping, but he's not sleeping. He's calculating, running the numbers of the family's survival in his head, checking them against last night's numbers, seeing what's changed. Docks today, your mother says. Again, not a question. Shorthand. Try, he says. The docks at the East India Company wharves hire casual labour every morning. You show up at the gate before the foreman appears. When the gate opens, the foreman picks men. He picks the ones he's seen before. He picks the ones who are strong and reliable and who haven't caused trouble. He picks maybe 60 men out of the 150 who've come to the gate hoping. The ones he picks work a day, maybe 2, maybe a week if they're lucky and a ship comes in that needs sustained unloading. The ones he doesn't pick go home. Your father has been picked and not picked. He's been working the docks on and off for 4 years now. Enough that the foreman knows his face, enough that he gets picked more often than not. But more often than not is not the same as every day, and every day that he doesn't work is a day the numbers get worse. He takes his tea standing up near the fire. He drinks it fast, the way men who've worked outdoor labour drink hot things, not savouring it, just consuming the heat before it's gone. He's dressed in the work clothes that haven't come off since Monday. A thick flannel shirt, heavy canvas trousers, boots with iron tips that he repaired himself with a piece of leather cut from a different old boot. The coat from the nail by the door. Before he goes, he puts his hand briefly on your mother's shoulder. Just rests it there for a second. She doesn't look up from where she's laying out the day's matchboxes on the boards. The matchboxes. Right. I haven't told you about the matchboxes. Your mother makes matchboxes. This is piecework. Homework. the work that comes to you because you can't leave, because the children need watching, because you can't afford to pay someone to watch the children while you go somewhere to work, because the geography of your life has a very small radius and everything has to happen inside it. A contractor comes twice a week. He brings flat pieces of cardboard, pre-scored, pre-cut. He brings the sandpaper strips for the sides. He brings the paste. He takes away the finished boxes, counts them, and pays by the gross, by the 144. For a gross of matchboxes, your mother earns 2.25 pence. Let me say that again. 2.25 pence. For 144 matchboxes. A matchbox takes about 3 minutes to make properly if you're very fast and very practiced, and your hands are working well. Your mother is all three of those things. She still makes, on a good day, a day when the children don't need her, when the paste is the right consistency, when her hands aren't too cold to fold the cardboard cleanly, maybe 3 gross. Sometimes 4 if she starts early and goes late. 4 gross, 9 pence. This is a good day's earnings for a full day's work. But your mother doesn't work alone on the matchboxes. You help. Agnes helps when she's not at the ragged school. Robert helps in the evenings. William used to help before the factory took him. Even Francis, 3 years old, has a job in this operation. He holds the strips of sandpaper flat while your mother pastes them, his small hands pressing down on the cardboard, because an extra pair of hands is an extra pair of hands, and the arithmetic of piecework doesn't care how old the hands are. You sit down across from your mother now, next to the fire's small warmth, and you pull a pile of cardboard pieces toward you. Your fingers know the motions without thinking about them. Score the fold lines. Apply the paste. Thin, even, not too much, or it bleeds through and the box won't sit right. Fold the sides up. Press the corner joins. Set it to dry. Score, paste, fold, press, set. Score, paste, fold, press, set. The cardboard is stiff and the edges are sharp. After an hour, your fingertips hurt. After 2 hours, they're cracked at the tips where the cardboard edges have braided the skin repeatedly. Your fingernails are always slightly torn, always slightly dark with paste residue that doesn't wash out fully. This is what your hands look like. This is what your hands have always looked like. The fire pops. Tommy stirs in the bed, makes a small sound of pre-waking complaint, settles again. Agnes turns over. The morning is grey through the window which is, to be precise, one small pane of glass, about the size of a large book set high in the wall. It gives you sky mostly, sometimes pigeons. Score, paste, fold, press, set. By 7 o'clock the room has changed. The fire has the space warm enough that your breath no longer shows. Tommy's awake and your mother is feeding him from her own body, seated on the edge of the bed, her eyes distant in the way they go when she's doing one thing while thinking about 6 other things simultaneously. Agnes is awake, dressed, eating the morning's bread. The bread came yesterday from the chandler's shop on the corner where your family keeps a credit book. I'll come back to the credit book. I'll come back to it because the credit book is important and terrible and central to everything. William left at 5:30 for the factory. He didn't say goodbye. He never says goodbye. He just gets up and goes, like a man who has learned not to make a fuss out of the things that must be done. William works at a match factory in the Mile End Road. He operates one of the dipping machines, the machines that coat the match heads in yellow phosphorus. He's been doing it for 2 years. He earns 7 shillings a week, which is, in the context of this family, a genuinely significant amount of money. More than your mother makes on matchboxes, about equal to what your father makes on dock work in a good week. The phosphorus smell comes home with him every evening. It's in his hair. It's in his skin. The skin on his hands and forearms is slightly yellowed, which the foreman says is normal and nothing to worry about. You've started noticing that William holds his jaw differently in the evenings than he did a year ago. More carefully, like it hurts to open it too wide. You haven't said anything about this. Neither has your mother. Either she hasn't noticed, which is not possible because your mother notices everything, or she has noticed and has decided not to say anything, which is the more likely explanation, because what would you say? What is there to say? The factory pays, the phosphorus is there, the work is there. William goes to it. This is the calculus of necessity. You don't get to weigh the dangers of your options when you only have one option. Francis is awake now, sitting up on the bed with his knees pulled to his chest, watching the room with the large, serious eyes of a 3-year-old who knows that the world is strange and adult, not always explicable. He needs his nappy changed. Your mother hands Tommy to Agnes, stands, handles the situation with the particular efficiency of a woman who has cleaned up after children for 11 years with limited water and limited time. She folds the soiled cloth, sets it to soak in the bucket, the clean one, the water bucket that's been repurposed now. She wipes Francis down with a damp cloth that is cold enough that he gasps and says, very seriously, no. Yes, she says. This exchange happens every morning. It is, in some way, the most tender ritual in the room. Breakfast. The bread from the chandler's shop is 2 days old. Not stale in the way that bread in a comfortable household goes stale, dry and disappointing. Stale in the way that cheap bread goes stale, dense and slightly sour. The texture of compressed sawdust in your mouth, because some of it might actually be sawdust, or chalk, or alum. I'm not being dramatic. In 1857, bread adulteration is a well-documented scandal. A House of Commons committee is actively investigating it. Bakeries, particularly bakeries that supply the cheap end of the market, the penny loaves that feed families like yours, supplement their flour with chalk dust with alum, a chemical that makes bread appear lighter and whiter than the flour content would justify, with potato starch, with ground dried peas, occasionally with sawdust. The Analytical Sanitary Commission ran analyses in the early 1850s. They found adulterants in the majority of cheap bread samples they tested. None of the bakers serving your neighbourhood have changed their practices since then. You eat your slice of bread, one slice, thin, maybe 2 ounces of bread, with a smear of dripping. Dripping is the fat that collects at the bottom of a roasting pan, is what you get when you buy the cheapest cuts of meat from the meat cellar and cook them in water. It's not nothing. It has fat in it. It has some of the taste of meat transferred into the fat by cooking. It is, in the context of breakfast options available to you, a luxury. And it means today's bread is better than some mornings. You eat it standing up. The boxes take the space at the surface. Agnes eats hers sitting on the floor, her back against the bed, reading the piece of newspaper that's been in the room for 3 weeks. She reads it slowly, sounding out the hard words, working through it like a text to be studied. She started learning to read at the ragged school on Commercial Street a year ago. She can read most of a newspaper now. Your parents can't read. Not well. Not beyond their names and a handful of useful words. Agnes reading the newspaper is the closest thing in this room to something that might be called hope. The tea, the reused leaf dried herb approximation of tea, goes around in the single tin mug. You drink your portion, pass it to Agnes, she passes it to your mother. Your father already left. The tea is hot enough to matter, and you hold the mug for a moment longer than necessary just to feel the warmth in your palms, in the cracked skin of your fingertips. Score, paste, fold, press, set. By 8 o'clock there's a knock at the door. 3 sharp knocks. The pattern means Mrs. Boyle from next door. Mrs. Boyle is 50, a widow, large and capable and kind in the particular way of women who've survived the deaths of a husband and 2 children, and still get up every morning and find reasons to knock on their neighbour's door. She comes in without waiting. This is how it is in this building. Doors are suggestions. Privacy is a luxury nobody at your level can afford. Carrying a small pot that has steam rising from it. "Oats," she says, setting it on the grate. "Made too much." She winks at your mother. She makes too much every Tuesday and Thursday. It is a deliberate, dignified charity, phrased as accident so that nobody has to say the word. Francis spots the pot and says porridge, with the intensity of a man identifying something he very much wants. "Aye," says Mrs. Boyle, "porridge." She ruffles his hair. She stays for a few minutes, standing near the fire, talking with your mother about the woman on the floor below who has been coughing badly for a week, about the landlord's agent who came yesterday, and whether Mr. Hutchins on the 2nd floor paid what he owes, about a man found dead in the lane off Spitalfields Market this morning. Not murder, probably, just cold and drink. The combination that takes people quietly in winter. You listen while you fold. It's background. This is the news of the building, of the street. This is what information sounds like when you don't have newspapers. Mrs. Boyle leaves. Your mother dishes the porridge into the tin bowl for Francis and Tommy. Agnes gets some. You're left with the thin film at the bottom of the pot, scraped up carefully and mixed with the last of the hot water. It's enough. You've had mornings with less. At 9 o'clock your mother sends you on the errand. The chandler's shop. The chandler's shop on the corner of Flower and Dean Street is where your family maintains what is called, in the local parlance, the book. The book is a credit ledger. A little notebook kept by Mr. Croft, the chandler, with a page for each family, and on that page a running record of every purchase made on credit and every payment made against the debt. You need oil for the lamp. You need a new tallow candle. You need a 1/4 pound of tea. Real tea this time, or as real as Mr. Croft sells, which is tea mixed with old tea dust and dried sloe leaves and probably other things, but is at minimum tea adjacent. And you need to make a payment against the account. The payment is 6pence. Your mother has 6pence. 2 silver coins, 3 pennies each, pressed into your hand with the instruction that she recites the same way every time, as ritual, as prayer. Tell him it's 6pence against the book and we'll have another 1/4 pound of tea. Tell him the oil can and 1 white candle. Don't let him add for the candle without taking it off the tallow. Tell him we're not buying tallow this week. If he says the debt is past 3 shillings, come straight back and tell me. You have this memorised. You've run this errand dozens of times. You could do it in your sleep. The chandler's shop is 3 doors and a corner away. You know the route so well that you're already there before you've consciously decided to move. Mr. Croft's shop is small, packed to the ceiling with things in a way that suggests aggressive optimism about storage space. Bundles of rush candles, wheels of tallow, oil in large brown bottles. Behind the counter, the tea, the sugar, the salt, the odds and ends of dried goods that the neighbourhood needs to get through the week. The smell of the place is tallow and tea, a combination so specific to this shop that you could identify it blindfolded. Mr. Croft himself is a man who's achieved a kind of comfortable solidity. He's not wealthy, he's comfortable. He owns his shop, he keeps his accounts, he extends credit to the families in the neighbourhood, because without credit they couldn't buy at all, and without them buying, he wouldn't have a shop. It's a mutual dependency, carefully managed. He knows your face, he knows your family's account. Eliza, he says, not unfriendly, a transaction greeting, professional and warm. You make the payment. You get the sixpence entered on the credit side of the ledger. You watch him write it because your mother told you always watch him write it. Always see the number go in. You ask about the tea, about the oil, about the candle. He adds them to the credit side. He checks the balance. 2 shillings and twopence, he says, after your payment. 2 shillings and twopence. The number sits in the air between you. Not catastrophic. Your mother's warning was 3 shillings, and you're under it. But not comfortable either. That's a significant debt to carry on piecework and dockwork wages. Mother says thank you, you say, which is what you always say. Give her my regards, he says, which is what he always says. You carry the goods back in a cloth bag that's been reused so many times the handles have been retied twice. The candle wrapped in paper, the oil in the can, the tea in its twist of brown paper. On the way back you pass the Gin Palace. The Gin Palace on Whitechapel High Street is nothing like the chandler's shop. The chandler's shop is functional, honest, dim, slightly cramped. The Gin Palace is, and I want you to understand how genuinely shocking this contrast is in an otherwise grey street. The Gin Palace is blazing, gaslit. This is important. The streets around you are lit, on good nights, by oil lanterns. Most of the shops in the neighbourhood are candle-lit. The Gin Palace runs gas lamps at full burn all day and all night, and from the outside in the grey February morning the effect is almost violent. Gold light pouring through wide windows, illuminating an interior that has been fitted out with mirrored walls and polished counters and glass decanters in rows. There are brass fittings. There is real glass. There are surfaces that have been cleaned. Outside, in the street, in the cold, in the grey morning, everything is the colour of wet stone and coal dust. Inside that door, gold light, heat, the smell of spirits, and the quality of nothing being required of you except your penny. You don't go in. You're 13, and you've been sent on an errand, and your mother's sixpence was carefully accounted for, and none of it belongs in there. But you pause for a moment, looking through the window. There are people in there already. It's not yet 9:30 in the morning. A man with the exhausted posture of someone who worked a night shift, sitting at the counter with a glass in front of him. 2 women talking with the particular warmth of people who've found a warm place on a cold day. A boy, older than you, standing near the door, not drinking, just standing in the warm. The gin they sell costs a penny a glass. A penny is the price of a slice of bread. A penny buys you 20 minutes in a warm-lit room where nobody asks you anything, and the chairs are soft and the lamps are bright, and the world outside with its damp walls and its frozen mornings and its paste-stiff fingertips and its credit book and its bucket in the corner has temporarily ceased to exist. You understand why people go in. You understand it in a way that doesn't require explanation. You understand it the way you understand any decision that looks from the outside like a failure and from the inside feels like survival. You walk past. You go back up the stairs. You give your mother the bag. 2 and twopence on the book, you say. She nods. She takes the tea. She says nothing else about it. Score, paste, fold, press, set. The middle of the morning is the long part. This is what nobody tells you about poverty. Not the catastrophes, not the moments of extreme suffering, which happen but aren't every minute. The texture of it is this: the long middle of the morning, the hours of repetitive work, the rhythm of a task that your hands know so well your mind goes somewhere else, and the somewhere else is not a good place to be, because there is nothing to think about that doesn't lead back to the numbers. The number of boxes in this pile, the number of pence each gross earns, the number of hours until your father might come back, and whether he'll come back with a day's wages or the expression that means he stood at the gate and the foreman didn't pick him, the number on the credit book, the rent, which is due Friday, which is always due on Friday, which is 3 shillings and sixpence for this room, this 12-foot by 10-foot room, which your family pays to a landlord they've never met, through his agent who comes every Friday morning with a leather satchel and a manner that suggests he's doing you a favour by collecting. 3 shillings and sixpence per week for this room. In 1857, this is not an unusual rent for Whitechapel. It's not even high for Whitechapel. There are families paying more for less. Cellars, subdivided rooms, partitioned spaces where someone has nailed up a rough wooden panel and called it 2 rooms and charged 2 rents. The demand for housing in the East End vastly exceeds the supply, and landlords know this, and the market reflects this, and the families on the floors of these buildings live with the results. Your landlord, who you've never met, owns this building and 14 others. He lives in a house in Islington with a garden and a housekeeper and a coal fire in every room. You're aware of this. You've been made aware of it in the way that all knowledge like this reaches people in your position. Not through news, not through formal explanation, but through the accumulated drift of overheard conversation, of things adults say when they're not monitoring themselves, of the way the agent's good wool coat looks in your doorway when he comes for the rent. None of this resentment is useful. This is just the texture of the morning, the fold, the press, the background hum of arithmetic that doesn't balance. Tommy starts crying around 10 o'clock. He's hungry. Properly hungry now, not the vague complaint crying of earlier. Your mother stops work, picks him up, walks him in the small space available for walking, which is approximately 3 steps in any direction. She hums something, not quite a tune, just a sound in the back of her throat. The same sound she's been making to quiet babies for 11 years. Francis has found a stub of pencil from somewhere and is drawing on a scrap of cardboard with the focused seriousness of a person creating important work. The drawing appears to be either a horse or a large cat. Both are equally plausible. Agnes left for the Ragged School at 8:30. The Ragged School Union runs a school on Commercial Street. Free schooling for children who can't afford the penny-a-week school fees. Agnes goes 3 days a week when she's not needed at home. She's learning reading and arithmetic and occasionally something else. The idea that the world might be a larger place than this room. Your mother watches Agnes go to school the way she watches the credit book balance, with a careful, guarded attention, not allowing herself to plan too far ahead, not allowing the hope to get too specific, just watching. Robert comes back around midday. He's been running errands for the greengrocer on Commercial Street, carrying boxes, sweeping, being physically present and willing in exchange for a few pennies and, more importantly, the occasional bruised piece of fruit or slightly soft vegetable that the greengrocer can't sell, but also can't justify throwing away. Today he has a fistful of small potatoes with soft spots, 2 slightly withered carrots, and 3pence. He hands all of it to your mother. She takes it. She doesn't say thank you, not because she's ungrateful, but because thanking your children for giving you their earnings is a conversation that would have to be about things she doesn't have words for right now. The potatoes go into the pot, the carrots too, water from the bucket, the fire gets a piece of coal it wasn't going to get until evening, soup of a kind. The sort of soup that is mostly hot water with optimism, but it will be warm and it will be something. At 2 p.m, a knock at the door. Not Mrs. Boyle's knock. 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced. This is the knock you've been hoping not to hear. Your mother stands up slowly, sets Tommy on the floor, smooths her dress, pins her hair with the 2 pins she keeps on the shelf. She does all this before she opens the door because appearances matter even when, especially when, you have nothing else. The man at the door is Mr. Betts. He is the agent. He's a small man with a large coat and a leather satchel, and the particular professional neutrality of someone who collects money from poor people for a living and has made his peace with this. He's not cruel. He's not kind. He's simply there, performing a function with the satchel and the book and the column of numbers that represents your family's relationship with the man in Islington who owns this room. Mrs. Marsh, he says. Mr. Betts, she says. It's Wednesday. Rent is due Friday. He's here on Wednesday. This happens sometimes. If the landlord is in need of liquidity, if he has debts of his own to service, if an investment has gone poorly, if he simply decides he'd rather have the week's rent on Wednesday than Friday. The agent comes early. Coming early is not illegal. Coming early is entirely within the landlord's rights. Coming early means your mother has to pay now instead of Friday. It means the money she was planning to supplement with 2 more days of matchbox earnings isn't available yet. It means the numbers she'd been running in her head have to be run again, faster, against a different timeline. She opens the locked box. You don't watch directly. You keep your eyes on the cardboard in front of you, your hands moving. Score, paste, fold, press, set. Score, paste, fold, press, set. You hear the sound of coins. You hear your mother's voice, low, discussing something with the agent. You hear a pause. 2 shillings 6pence, she says. The rest on Friday. Another pause. Full amount is expected on the normal day, Mrs. Marsh. His voice is not unkind. It's just the voice of a function. Coming short puts you in a poorer position. Friday, she says. Full amount Friday. He writes in his book. He takes the 2 shillings 6pence. He leaves. Your mother stands for a moment with her back to you, her hand on the door, very still. Then she turns around and sits back down and picks up the cardboard. Score, paste, fold, press, set. More boxes today, is all she says. You don't answer. You fold faster. You press harder. Your fingertip splits along an old crack and you wipe it on your apron and keep going. I need to stop here for a moment. Or rather, the narrative needs to step back from the room for a moment, because we're living so close to the floor of it that I want to give you the scale. What your mother just did, paying partial rent on a Wednesday and promising the remainder by Friday, is not unusual. It is, in fact, a nearly universal experience for families at this level of the East End economy. The weekly arithmetic is essentially impossible. If everything goes right, your father works 3 days at the docks. Your mother makes 4 gross of matchboxes on 4 working days. William's factory wages come in on time. The family earns maybe 9 or 10 shillings in a week. The rent is 3 shillings and 6pence. Coal, food, oil, and the credit book take the rest. There is no remainder. There is no savings. There is no buffer. If anything goes wrong, if your father gets picked 0 days instead of 3, if William's wages are docked for something, if the baby is sick and your mother can't work, the arithmetic goes negative. The family goes into debt. The credit book grows. The rent comes short. And here is the cruelty of it. The poorer you are, the more expensive everything is. We talked about coal bought by the half bucket. But it's not just coal. The chandler's shop charges more per unit for small amounts of tea than the wealthy housewife pays for £1 at a time. The credit book charges interest, not stated directly, but built into the prices. The landlord can come early and there's nothing you can do. The system is designed through 1,000 small mechanisms to keep families exactly here. Not in grinding starvation. That would be economically inconvenient. You can't work if you're starving. But in the permanent anxiety of the next payment, the next shortfall, the next Wednesday knock. It is, in its way, extremely efficient. Okay, back to the room. Your father comes back at 3:30. You know as soon as you hear his step on the stairs. You know all of their steps, the way people know the distinctive footfalls of everyone they live with, that it's been a good day. His steps on the stairs are different when it's been a good day. A different weight or a different tempo or some quality that you register without being able to name it. The way you register the difference between your father's tired face and your father's relieved face before he said a word. He's worked. He's worked a full day, unloading a ship that came in from Portugal, boxed cargo, heavy work. He puts 3 shillings on the box. Your mother looks at it, doesn't touch it yet. Good, she says. Long, he says, but good. He drops onto the bed and sits there for a moment, boots on, which he doesn't usually do. His hands are raw from the rope work. There's a smell of brine on him from the cargo and tar and the particular damp cold of the river in February. He closes his eyes, not sleeping. Just for a moment, not carrying the weight. Your mother puts 2 of the 3 shillings with the locked box's contents. The 3rd she uses to send Robert back to the chandler's shop for bread and for another £1/2 of dripping. Proper dripping this time, not the thin scraping. Tonight the soup will have bread to go with it. This is what a good day looks like. This is what the relief of a good day looks like, in a family where good days are not guaranteed. 3 shillings on the box, 2 of it set aside for the rent shortfall. 1 of it turned into bread. The children can feel it when the numbers are better. Tommy seems calmer. Francis abandons his drawing and climbs onto the bed next to his father and lies on his back staring at the ceiling with serene 3-year-old satisfaction. Your mother's shoulders, which have been slightly raised all day, lower. You keep folding. The afternoon light through the small window is going already. In February, London's afternoon is brief and reluctant, the sky going from grey to darker grey to the particular orange-grey of coal smoke at dusk. You'll need the candle soon, and the candle needs to be used carefully. Score, paste, fold, press, set. You've made today roughly 2.5 gross of matchboxes. That's 5 pence and a farthing. For 6 hours of work, off and on, between the water errand and the chandler's errand, and the morning cooking and the baby management. 5 pence and a farthing. Your hands hurt. William comes home at 6. You hear him on the stairs before you see him. His step heavier than your father's, more deliberate. The step of someone managing fatigue with conscious effort rather than simply carrying it. He's been at the factory since 5:30 this morning, 12.5 hours. The factory closes at 6, allows 10 minutes for the workers to wash their hands. A regulation gesture toward the idea of hygiene that everyone on both sides of the transaction knows is insufficient. And then the gate opens and the workers come out into the evening like something released. He comes through the door and the smell comes with him. You've gotten used to it the way you've gotten used to everything in this room, by necessity, by repetition, by the adaptation that happens when there is no alternative. But tonight, for some reason, it hits you more directly. The phosphorus smell. It's particular, this smell. Not like sulphur exactly. Sharper than that. Somehow cleaner and more wrong at the same time. Like the smell of a struck match held to your nose for too long. Like something that belongs to chemistry and not to kitchens. It lives in his hair, in the fabric of his shirt, in the skin of his hands and forearms, where, in low light, if you look carefully, his skin faintly glows. A pale, cold glow. The phosphorus absorbed through the skin over months, until it's part of him now, working its way through the tissues like light through water. He hangs his coat on the nail. He sits on the coal sacks near the door, his usual place, and he tilts his head back against the wall. His jaw. You look at his jaw the way you've been looking at it for weeks, the way you look at something you're hoping to see differently than you saw it yesterday. The left side. There's a swelling there, has been for a while, subtle at first, the kind of thing that could be explained away. A bad tooth, a knock, tiredness rearranging the face. But tonight in the firelight it's more than subtle. The skin on the left side of his jaw and along his lower cheek is tight and slightly shiny. The way skin looks when something underneath it is under pressure. When he eats, he tilts his head to the right. He's been doing this for 3 weeks, and you've been pretending not to notice, and he's been pretending not to notice you noticing. And this is a family practice of silence that keeps the machinery running. "All right," your father says. He's watching too. He has been watching. "Tired," William says. This is what William always says. It is increasingly hard to know what it means. The word "phossy jaw" won't appear in popular usage for a few more years. But the condition is not new. The factory surgeons know about it. Some of the foremen know about it. The workers know about it. They talk about it in low voices between shifts. The same way people talk about things that they can't leave and can't fix. A kind of compulsive accounting of a danger that is fully understood and fully unavoidable. Yellow phosphorus, absorbed into the body through the lungs, through the skin, through any cut or crack in the tissue, works its way to the bone. Specifically to the jaw, specifically to the periosteum, the living membrane around the bone itself. Once there, it begins to destroy. The bone dies. The jaw literally begins to rot. In advanced cases, the affected bone glows green in the dark. The tissue around it breaks down. The pain is what you'd imagine if you imagined a bone dying slowly inside the flesh of your face while you were still alive and needing to eat and speak and carry on. Some workers lose their jaw entirely. Surgeons remove it to save the patient's life. This is the treatment. Removing the jaw. The factory knows. The factory continues to use yellow phosphorus because it is cheaper than the red phosphorus alternative that Sweden has adopted. That doesn't cause this disease. That could be used here for a modest increase in production cost. The modest increase in production cost has been weighed against the workers' jaws, and the decision has been made, and William goes back tomorrow. He eats his soup, the potato-carrot soup with the bread that Robert fetched, carefully on the right side of his mouth. He hands most of his bread to Francis, who takes it without ceremony, the way children accept gift from older siblings, as simply the way things are. Nobody says anything about the jaw. Your mother refills his bowl without asking. He eats the second portion. The fire crackles. Outside, the street has shifted into its evening register. The day workers mostly home, the night workers beginning to stir, the costermongers packing up their carts, the tavern noise beginning its slow climb toward whatever it will be by 10 o'clock. Good haul today, your father says, meaning the dock work. He's trying to give the evening something to stand on. William nods, slowly. Good, he says. The word comes out slightly wrong. Not badly. Not in a way that anyone not listening for it would catch. But the way he forms the initial consonant, the brief extra care he takes before opening his mouth, tells you something about what it costs him to use that jaw for ordinary speech. You look down at your hands, your knuckles, the dried paste between your fingers. Score, paste, fold, press, set. The candle is lit now. One tallow candle on the broken plate, its light yellow and slightly greasy, the smell of it adding to the room's existing catalogue of smells. You need the light to keep working. You've got another half gross to do before your mother will let the evening be the evening. After supper, the building moves. This is something you notice because you live in it. The way a large building's population shifts in the evening. The way sounds change. The way the texture of the air inside the walls changes as 100 people transition from work mode to not work mode. Whatever not work mode looks like at this level, which is primarily sitting somewhere warmer than where you've been all day, with something in your hand that isn't a tool and letting the muscles go. You hear Mrs. Collins from the floor above singing something. She always sings in the evening, has a good voice, sings hymns mostly, and sometimes a music hall song she's heard somewhere. And the music comes down through the ceiling with a quality that is not beautiful exactly, but is human, which is close enough. You hear the Gallagher family on your floor, 3 doors down, in one of their periodic loud arguments, which are passionate and frequent and appear to resolve themselves without violence, which puts them above average for the building. From below, the tallow smell intensifies slightly as Mr. Hensley finishes his day's rendering and the cooling fat gives off its last wave of grease smell into the building's air. Agnes comes back from the school. She stayed late, she does sometimes, helps the teacher organise the reading primers because she likes them and because it means spending more time somewhere that isn't this room. She comes in carrying the little square of chalk and the piece of slate she uses for practising her letters, and she sits down near the fire and writes things on it, with the focused happiness of someone in possession of a skill they find genuinely extraordinary. You watch her for a moment, her bent head, the way she forms each letter carefully, with the particular deliberateness of someone who hasn't been doing it long enough to do it carelessly. She looks up, catches you watching. "What?" she says. "Nothing," you say. "You're holding the chalk wrong." "I'm not." "The side of your hand'll smear it." She adjusts her grip slightly, not admitting you were right, and goes back to her letters. This is how love works in a room this size. Obliquely. Through the useful thing, the observed thing, the adjustment offered without acknowledgement. There's not space for anything larger than that. There's not the physical distance to have the kind of feelings that require space to express them. You love your sister the way you love the knowledge of where the broken step is. Precisely. Practically. Without needing to say so. At 8 o'clock, the building becomes a different place. I want to describe this carefully because it's one of the things that the history books get wrong about slum life in Victorian London. They describe the poverty, they describe the conditions, but they don't quite describe the particular quality of a shared building at night. The way a structure housing 50 or 60 people settles into collective darkness. The way individual sounds from behind thin walls create a kind of unwanted intimacy, a knowledge of each other's nights that nobody asked for. The family next to yours, the Pierces, a man and a woman and 4 children under 10, the youngest child has been sick for a week. Nothing dramatic. A cough, a fever that comes and goes, the hot and cold cycling of a child's immune system working on something. The cough comes through the wall. You've been hearing it for a week. Your mother has mentioned it twice in passing. The way she mentions things that concern her without directly stating the concern. The concern is cholera. This is always the concern. This is the background radiation of life in the East End in 1857. Cholera has been through this city twice in living memory, 1832 and 1848. And both times it moved through the poor districts with a speed and devastation that had no equivalent in the better neighbourhoods, for the simple reason that the better neighbourhoods had different water. The 1854 Soho outbreak proved the water connection, proved it clinically and conclusively, and the response from the authorities has been to acknowledge the science and continue to supply contaminated water to the neighbourhoods that can't afford to object. The child next door is probably not cholera. Probably. The cough is the wrong kind. Cholera presents with vomiting and purging first, not respiratory symptoms, but probably is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and your mother has started carrying the water jug to the fire to boil before drinking, which she doesn't do in summer, which tells you she's doing the same calculation. Robert has been told not to share anything with the Pierce children this week. He has been told this once, firmly, and received it with the practical acceptance of an 11-year-old boy who has grown up in a building where sickness travels through the walls. Around 8:30, Mrs. Pierce knocks. Your mother answers. A brief conversation at the door, your mother's body blocking most of the doorway. Voices too low to hear clearly. You catch fragments. Worse this evening. And the privy, twice. And your mother's voice, steady and practical. Boiled water and keep her warm. Then the door closes. Your mother stands for a moment with a hand on the door again. The girl's worse, she says. To the room. To nobody specifically. Your father looks up from the coal sacks where he's been sitting with his eyes half closed. How bad? Bad enough to worry about. She goes back to the fire. She moves the water jug over the heat. Eliza, Agnes, don't use the privy tonight. She doesn't explain why. She doesn't need to. The privy is a shared structure 3 floors down, accessed through the back of the building. A brick enclosure over a cesspit that serves this entire building, and possibly parts of the neighbouring buildings. The geography of Victorian plumbing is not precise. It gets emptied by the night soil men periodically when the cesspit is full enough to demand attention, and the landlord can be persuaded to pay for the removal. Between removals, it fills, it overflows. The liquid waste seeps into the ground, and from the ground, eventually into the groundwater and the wells and the pumps that the neighbourhood drinks from. This is the system. This is the 1857 sanitation system for Whitechapel. You look at the corner bucket. Tonight it will do. The bucket is the other system. Let me tell you about the privy since we're talking about it, because it is genuinely central. to understanding how disease moves through a building like this, and I want you to have the full sensory reality of it before we move on. The privy is a wooden seat over a pit. 2 seats, actually. This is a relative luxury in a tenement of this size. Some buildings have 1 seat for 60 people. Side by side in a dark brick enclosure with a door that doesn't fully close. The smell is present before you open the door. It is present at the bottom of the stairs that lead to the back of the building. By the time you're inside, it is not so much a smell as a physical experience. The pit underneath the pit is never empty. The night soil men come perhaps once a month, sometimes less. In the weeks between visits, the pit fills. In the weeks after it has filled past capacity, the overflow follows gravity and goes where gravity takes it. Into the gaps in the brick, into the soil of the small court behind the building, toward the drainage channel that runs along the back of the row. The drainage channel connects to the sewer. The sewer, in 1857, connects to the Thames. Everything in the city flows toward the river eventually. The Thames also supplies the water. John Snow knew this. The government knew this. The engineer Joseph Bazalgette is right now, in 1857, beginning the work of designing the new deep sewerage system that will, when completed in 1866, finally break this loop. He is in the middle of it. The plans are drawn. The arguments are being made in Parliament. The funding is being debated. In the Whitechapel tenement, the pit is full. The drainage channel runs past the foundations, and the Pierce girl is coughing. These things are connected. That's the thing about living on the bottom floor of the city's systems. You feel the effects of the connections that the people at the top of the systems discuss in abstract terms. The connection between sewage and water and disease is not, for you, a matter of scientific debate. It's the bucket in the corner, and the child coughing through the wall, and your mother boiling the water without explaining why. You know why. You just don't say it. At 9 o'clock, William goes to bed. He doesn't stay up in the evenings much anymore. 6 months ago he'd go out sometimes, to the pub at the end of the street, to the penny gaff around the corner where you could hear music and watch performances for a penny entrance fee, to the simple social ritual of standing outside in summer evenings when the days were long enough to make standing outside bearable. Now he goes to his coal sacks after supper with the purposeful resignation of someone conserving resources. He takes off his boots, the only item of clothing he removes, the same as your father, the same as almost everyone in this room who sleeps in what they're going to wear tomorrow. And he lies down, and he's asleep within minutes. You've watched him do this. The speed of it. The way sleep takes him like a trapdoor opening. 12.5 hours at the factory and then sleep like falling. You think, not for the first time, about what it would be like to be tired like that. Not your kind of tired, which is the ache of repetitive work and early mornings and the low-level constant effort of managing inside this space. His kind of tired, the total exhaustion of a body that has been used at capacity for most of its waking hours. He doesn't move. He lies on his back and his chest rises and falls and he doesn't move. Your mother is still at the boxes. She'll work until the candle gets too short to see by. This is her calculation every evening. Burn the candle to its end and have no candle tomorrow, or stop earlier and have half an inch left for the morning. She's always trying to find the exact midpoint of this, the place where tonight's work and tomorrow's light are both served. Francis and Tommy are asleep in the bed. Francis with his thumb in his mouth, which your mother will gently remove when she comes to bed because she worries about the habit, though she has larger things to worry about. Your father has fallen asleep on the coal sacks. He'll wake in an hour or so and move to the bed, which is how the bed sharing works across the family. Children arrange by size and need around your mother, your father occupying whatever space remains. Your mother sleeping along the edge. Agnes is asleep. She went fast the way she always goes. One moment vertical, the next folded up on the mattress, the coat pulled up, gone. Robert is doing something with a piece of string near the fire, a cat's cradle, or some variation of it. He's been working on the same string configuration for 3 days, trying to get it into a shape he saw another boy make on the street. He hasn't gotten it yet. He keeps trying. You're the only one fully awake. Score, paste, fold, press, set. The candle is down to maybe an inch. Your mother will call time soon. Through the wall, the pierced child coughs. Your mother puts down the cardboard at 10:15. She doesn't announce it. She simply sets the piece she's working on aside, presses her palms flat on the surface of the box, and sits for a moment with her eyes closed. Then she stands and begins the end-of-day sequence that you know as well as you know your own heartbeat. The fire banked, coals arranged so they'll hold heat as long as possible without burning through before morning. The candle extinguished. She licks 2 fingers and pinches the wick, the gesture so practiced it barely registers. The water jug moved away from the grate so it won't boil dry overnight. The locked box checked with 2 fingers across the lid, not opening it, just confirming it's there, the same way a person checking their pocket for a key doesn't take the key out. She checks Francis and Tommy, adjusts the blanket, touches each of their faces briefly with the back of her hand, checking temperature, checking sleep depth, checking the way mothers check things without anyone teaching them how. She looks at you. Go to sleep, Eliza. I've got 8 more to finish the gross. In the morning. They need in the morning. Not stern, just final. The voice that says the discussion has already been had and settled, even if only she was present for it. You set down the cardboard. You flex your fingers. The joints ache with the long day, the particular complaint of skin and tendon that have been moving in small repetitive motions for hours. The crack on your left index finger is bleeding slightly, slow and dark. You press it against your apron. You lie down on the mattress next to Agnes. She's warm and doesn't wake. The thin blanket goes over both of you. The room is dark now. No candle, fire banked to red coals that cast a low amber glow across the floor. The window gives a small square of night sky. Orange-grey with the reflected glow of the city. London never gets truly dark, not even in 1857. The gas lamps and the fires and the sheer quantity of light created by 500,000 people maintaining their lives gives the sky a perpetual brown warmth. You lie on your back and listen to the building. The building at night is its own world. Above you, feet. The family on the 2nd floor, the parents still moving. A child being settled. The creak of boards that know every footstep, that have been learning footsteps for 37 years. Around you, breathing. The 8 rhythms of this room, each slightly different. Your father's breathing has a particular quality, not quite a snore, more of a deepened pause at the end of each exhale, the breathing of a man whose body has made its peace with hard work. Your mother barely breathes audibly, even now. Tommy makes small sounds in his sleep, small vowels, the subverbal life of a sleeping infant. William's breathing from the coal sacks is slow and very even. Almost too even, you think. The breathing of someone who isn't dreaming. Through the walls, the building's night chorus, a man coughing somewhere above. The Gallagher baby distantly, crying and then stopping. the slow tick-tick of the wood contracting as the temperature drops, rats in the walls. You've known about the rats your whole life. They move through the gaps in the old construction with a confidence that comes from understanding that this is, in an important sense, their building too. They eat what you don't secure. They've been eating what your family doesn't secure for as long as your family has lived here. There's a smell from the wall near the window tonight that suggests they've been in the building materials again. This is not a new smell. This is a background condition. Through the floor, Mr. Hensley's tallow operation is silent now, but the smell remains. In winter, when the grease cools, it takes on a slightly different quality. Less hot animal, more cold animal. A different register of the same essential fact. Outside, the street outside your window never entirely stops. Whitechapel at 10 o'clock at night is not quiet. The pubs are open until 11. The gin shops don't close, some of them. They stay open as long as there is custom, and there is always custom. From somewhere down the street, indistinct through the wall and the window, you can hear voices, not arguing, just voices. The particular murmur of people who don't want to go home yet, or have nowhere to go home to, making their small protests against darkness and silence. A cart goes by. The wheels on the cobblestones have a sound that you can tell by weight. Empty cart, fast, probably the delivery run from the market finishing for the night. Further away, the sound that London makes collectively, the hum of it. In a quiet room at night, in the right conditions, you can actually hear the city as a single organism, not any specific sound, but the aggregate of all sounds, the unresolvable chord of 2 million lives being conducted simultaneously. It's not a peaceful sound exactly, but it's a constant one. It's been there every night of your life. The child next door coughs. You listen. The cough has a new quality tonight. Deeper. Something in the chest rather than the throat. The kind of cough that sounds like something is working on the inside. You think about your mother's face when Mrs. Pierce knocked, the way she stood with her hand on the door afterward. You think about the water bucket, about the boiling water, about the pump on Flower and Dean Street. You think about 1832, which you only know from things you've heard, your mother's parents speaking of it, once briefly, in the way that people mention catastrophes that happened in living memory and that they'd rather not fully revisit. The streets emptying, the carts, the speed of it. There are things you're allowed to be frightened of, and things you're required to just carry. This is one of the things you're required to just carry. The knowledge of what the water might be carrying, what the walls might be carrying, what the shared privy at the bottom of the stairs is carrying up through the ground toward the foundations of this building. You carry it the way everyone in this building carries it. You put it in the part of your mind that holds the things that are true and unavoidable and not useful to think about in detail. You seal that compartment as well as you can. You let the breathing of 7 other people in this room, the warmth of your sister beside you, the amber glow of the banked fire, do the work that needs doing. You close your eyes. Here is what you know about your life that you've never had to be told explicitly. You know that you're not supposed to want more than this. Not because there's a rule, not because anyone has sat you down and told you your place, but because the entire structure of the world you move through communicates it, consistently and without exception, in 1,000 small ways that add up to a single lesson. The room is the room. The room is what there is. The people at the Royal Exchange, they're not your people. the factories and the piecework, the pump queue and the credit book. These are the structures of your life, and the message embedded in every one of them is that the structures are permanent and the people inside them are interchangeable. And what matters is that the boxes get made and the ships get unloaded and the wheels of commerce keep turning. And you are the mechanism by which that happens. And mechanisms don't want things except. Agnes is reading. William knows things about how the factory works. The machinery, the chemistry, the specific operations that the men who own the factory probably don't know in the same tactile bodily way. He knows it with his hands and his nose and the changed colour of his skin. Your mother runs a household, manages credit, negotiates the rent, calculates the weekly arithmetic, distributes resources across 8 people with a precision that a merchant would recognise as skill, except nobody calls it that. Nobody has a word for it except keeping house. And you know how to start a fire in a dead grate. You know how to boil a potato so it gives the most from the least. You know which board to skip on the stairs. You know the credit book balance to the penny without writing it down. These are not nothing. These are not the absence of intelligence or capability. They are intelligence and capability operating under conditions of extreme constraint, doing the maximum possible with the minimum available every single day, without error and without the option of error. There is no margin for error in a life run on this budget. The margin for error is exactly 0, and everyone in this room knows it, and everyone operates accordingly. You think about Agnes with her chalk and her slate, the letters forming under her hand. You think about the teacher at the ragged school. You've met her once, a small woman with ink on her fingers and an expression of concentrated purpose, who's teaching your sister to read for no pay in a drafty room with 50 children because she believes it matters. Maybe it does. Maybe Agnes is the margin. Maybe the small square of literacy your sister is building letter by letter, afternoon by afternoon, is the thing that opens a door that is currently closed. Maybe your mother knows this and is carefully, quietly, making space for it to happen. Your eyes are heavy. The fire is banked lower. The room is colder than it was, the chill seeping back in from the walls, from the window, from the floor. You pull the blanket tighter. Agnes makes a small sound in her sleep, adjusts, her arm coming to rest against yours. Warmth. The small physical fact of another person's warmth. Outside, the street gets quieter. One by one, the voices fade. The cart sounds stop. Even the gin shop seems to have reached its late-night equilibrium, where the customers who remain are past the talking stage and into the quieter territory of drink. The child next door has stopped coughing. You don't know if that's better or worse. You decide, in the deliberate way of someone managing their own mind, that it's better, that she's sleeping, that the body is doing the work bodies do, and by morning things will have shifted in the direction of better. You decide this. You allow yourself to believe it. Because what is the alternative? What is the alternative to getting up tomorrow, carrying the water, building the fire, folding the boxes, running the errand, carrying the water again? What is the alternative to the Tuesday, to the Wednesday, to the years of it? The slow accumulation of days that might, if they go in the right direction, add up to something. You don't know what they add up to yet. You're 13. You haven't been given the answer to that question. Nobody at your level gets the answer to that question in advance. But you're warm enough. You're here. You're, in the most basic and non-negotiable sense of the word, alive. That's not nothing either. Sleep comes for you the way it comes for people whose bodies know they've earned it. Not gracefully, not like sinking into something comfortable, more like a door closing, more like the candle going out. The thought you are having is there, and then it's not quite there, and then you're not sure you are having it, and then the room is a different thing, less fixed, less demanding of your attention. The sounds of the building become something other than information. The creak above you. Is that Thomas Pierce getting up in the night? Is that the building settling? Is that something you should attend to? It was something, and now it's just part of the texture of the dark. Your father's breathing, your mother's barely there exhale, William's steady, even chest rise from the coal sacks, the small sounds of Francis and Tommy, the particular sleep vocabulary of very small children. These are the sounds you've slept to every night of your life. Not peaceful sounds, most of them, not the sounds of an easy place, but yours. The sounds of the room that made you, that is making you still every night in the dark. Somewhere in the building a woman laughs, a brief surprise sound, something said in the room above that struck someone as funny at this hour. The laugh is real. In the middle of all of it, the damp walls, the cold, the credit book, the phosphorus on William's skin, the child coughing next door, the laugh is completely real. That too. There are 3 things that happen in the next week that I want to tell you about because they shift the shape of things. The first is that the Pierce girl, her name is Clara, she's 6, you've known her all her life, gets worse before she gets better. For 2 days she's bad enough that Dr. Warren from Commercial Street is sent for, which costs the Pierces money they don't have and which your mother contributes to with 3p from somewhere. Dr. Warren says it's not cholera. He says chest complaint, perhaps the beginning of something bronchial. Keep her warm and boiled water and rest. He says this the way doctors in 1857 say most things, with the calm authority of someone who knows quite a lot and can do quite little. He leaves his instructions, he takes his fee. Clara begins to improve on Thursday. By Saturday she's sitting up. By Sunday she's cross and demanding, which your mother says is the best sign of all. The second thing is that your father works every day from Monday through Saturday. 6 straight days at the docks, unloading 2 ships in succession, cargo from Lisbon and, after that, a vessel from the West Indies carrying sugar, the work of shifting it from hold to wharf stretching across 3 days. He comes home at the end of those 6 days with a look you don't see often. Not just relief, something almost like satisfaction, the feeling that comes from work done continuously and paid for in full from a week where the arithmetic ran in the right direction. He sits at the table on Saturday evening with the week's earnings in front of him, and he counts it out with your mother, the 2 of them side by side on the edge of the bed, speaking in low voices. Rent settled. Credit book, payment against. Coal, a full half bushel, which will last 2 weeks if they're careful. Food, enough for the week ahead with a small remainder. The remainder he puts in the locked box. It's not large. It's 3 shillings. 3 shillings is not nothing. Your mother doesn't say anything. She closes the box and locks it and puts it back. But that night she makes a supper that has actual meat in it, scraps from the butcher, the cheap end-of-day cuts boiled with the potatoes. The meat is mostly bone and a little gristle and a thin vein of actual flesh, but the flavour comes through the broth, and the room smells of food, proper food, for the first time in 10 days. Francis eats 3 bowls. You watch him eat, and you feel something in your chest that takes a moment to identify. It's something close to joy, not happiness exactly, not the absence of everything else, but joy, the specific kind that lives inside difficulty, the sharper kind, the kind that exists because of what surrounds it, that feeling. Hold on to that one. The third thing is William. On Wednesday evening, 14 days after you first really noticed the swelling, William comes home from the factory and he's early, an hour early. This has never happened. You don't come home early from the factory unless you've been let go or something has happened. He comes through the door and his face is wrong. Not wrong in a theatrical way, not pale or collapsed or showing obvious distress. Wrong in the specific way of someone who is holding something with great care and concentration because the alternative is dropping it. The jaw, the left side, is visibly different from what it was 2 weeks ago. The swelling has progressed. There's a quality to the light on that side of his face that looks like heat. Your mother sees it immediately. Of course she does. "Sit down," she says. Her voice is entirely flat, the flatness of someone removing all emotion from their voice so that their hands can stay steady. He sits on the coal sacks. He doesn't protest, which is the most frightening thing. She crouches in front of him. She puts 2 fingers against the swelling with the gentlest possible pressure. Just pressure, feeling for what's underneath. He flinches. One short flinch, controlled. "How long like this?" she says. "Week," he says. And then, more honestly, more. Your father has stopped pretending to be asleep. He's sitting up on the edge of the bed, watching. Your mother stands. She goes to the locked box. She opens it. "Factory sent you home," she says, her back to the room. "Foreman said to see a doctor," William says. "Said to come back when it's settled." When it's settled. A phrase designed to avoid saying what it's settling into. She takes money from the box. She looks at it. She puts some of it back. The calculation on her face is visible from across the room. The calculation of which crisis to address first, of what can wait and what cannot, of where the money that came from 6 days of dock work is actually required. "Eliza," she says, "go and fetch Mrs. Boyle." You go. Mrs. Boyle comes. She looks at William's jaw with the same careful expression your mother had, though on Mrs. Boyle it reads differently. Not the suppressed terror of a mother, but the practical assessment of a woman who has nursed 4 children and husband and any number of neighbours through any number of things, and has developed by necessity a working medical knowledge that no one has formally recognised and no one has formally paid. "Warm compress," Mrs. Boyle says, "tonight and tomorrow. Cloth soaked in hot water, press it against the side, as hot as he can bear." "And," your mother says, "she means..." And what else? She means, and what is this, and what do we do about it? Mrs. Boyle looks at William. She looks at your mother. The look between them carries a great deal, none of it audible. "Doctor," Mrs. Boyle says, "before the end of the week." William opens his mouth to protest the expense. Your mother stops him with a hand, not touching him, just raising her hand slightly, the gesture that says this is not a discussion. "Before the end of the week," she says. The expression on William's face is, it's complicated. Not fear exactly, or not only fear. It's the expression of a 16-year-old boy who's understood in some fundamental way that the thing that has been building in his jaw is not going to resolve itself with rest. That the decision made for him by the factory, by the necessity of the wages, by the absence of any other option, is now manifesting in his body as consequence, that the time for pretending it wasn't happening has passed. He nods, very carefully. That night, after the compress, after he's on his coal sacks and the room is dark, you hear him, once, make a sound. Quiet, quickly suppressed. The sound of someone in pain managing that pain with everything they have, not wanting to wake anyone, not wanting to be the cause of anything else for anyone. You lie still. You don't say anything. You let him have the privacy of it. In the morning he gets up and he goes to the factory, and your mother watches him go without stopping him, because there is no money to replace his wages while he's not working, and this is the arithmetic that makes the decision before either of them can make it themselves. 2 days later he goes to the doctor. The doctor on Commercial Street sees him for £1, the same Dr. Warren who saw Clara Pierce. He is, by local standards, a decent doctor, not remarkable, not brutal, doing his best with the tools and knowledge of 1857. He examines the jaw. He asks about William's work. He writes something in his notebook. He says the tooth must come out. He says there's an abscess forming that needs to be treated before it spreads. He does not say the word phosphorus. He does not say phossy jaw. He does not say the factory is destroying your brother's bone. He is treating the visible symptom, which is his job, and the underlying cause is too large and too industrial and too legal and too financially entangled with too many important people for a doctor on Commercial Street to address in a consultation room. The tooth costs 1 shilling and 6pence to remove. There is no anaesthesia for this procedure at this price point. There is a clean cloth and a firm hand and a direct practised pull, and then it's done. And William comes home grey and shaking, holding his jaw, and your mother heats water and makes the closest thing to a gentle meal the room can produce on a Wednesday afternoon. He's back at the factory Monday. Of course he is. Let me skip forward. This is the thing about a life like this. It doesn't have clean narrative arcs. It doesn't build toward a single crisis and a resolution. It's the accumulation of days that are each their own kind of weight, their own small negotiation with difficulty. The big events, the sick child, the tooth, the week of good wages, they're real, they happen, but they're embedded in the mass of ordinary days in a way that means the ordinary days are actually the story. So, weeks pass, February becomes March, March becomes April, and April in London is a different thing than February. The light comes back. The days stretch out in the mornings and the evenings, and the light through your small window goes from the grey-white of winter to something warmer, something that carries a colour in it that winter doesn't have. The smell of the street changes, less coal smoke. People stop burning fires for warmth as the temperatures rise, which means the air clears slightly, which means you can walk to the pump in the morning without the smoke sitting low in the streets. The costermongers come out with different things. Watercress and early vegetables and the first fruit of the season, colours on the street that winter doesn't have. The Pierce girl is fully recovered and can be heard through the wall in the evenings, talking at a volume that suggests she's making up for lost time. William's jaw has not swollen again since the tooth came out. He's still careful about how he opens his mouth. He's still slightly yellowed in the skin, but the immediate crisis has passed, and the factory keeps paying, and the family keeps running the arithmetic. Agnes has gotten through the alphabet and into words of 3 syllables at the ragged school. She comes home one Thursday afternoon and reads aloud from the newspaper, a full paragraph, carefully, working through the harder words with the deliberate effort of someone who is not yet fluent, but who is, undeniably reading, and your father watches her with an expression that you've never quite seen on his face before. Pride, not disguised as something else, just that, direct, the particular open-faced pride of a parent watching their child do something they themselves cannot do. He doesn't say anything. He goes back to whatever he was doing. But you saw it. Your mother saw it too. There's a Sunday in April when the weather is good enough that you go out. Not far, not on an adventure, just out, into the street, into the morning air that smells more of spring than of winter, and you walk down toward the market on Petticoat Lane, not to buy anything, just to look, just to move through the crowd with the slightly vertiginous pleasure of someone whose daily geography is very small, stepping briefly outside it. The market is its own chaos, its own particular world. Petticoat Lane on a Sunday morning is one of the strangest and most vital things you've ever seen, and you've been coming to it your whole life, and you never quite get used to it. Old clothes mostly. That's what the market is famous for. Stalls heaped with second-hand garments, sorted roughly by type. Coats on this side, dresses there, boots in the corner. The sellers hold things up, shake them at you, shout the merits of slightly worn wool and nearly intact leather over the din. But it's not just clothes. There are food sellers threading through the gaps between the stalls, calling their wares hot eels from a steaming pot, pickled herrings wrapped in newspaper, a man selling pies from a tray that hangs from his neck on a strap. The pies keeping warm somehow, steam rising from the vent holes in the top. The smell of the pies is something else entirely. Gravy, pastry, the suggestion of meat that may be optimistic, but hot, undeniably hot, and your stomach registers it as want before you've consciously decided to want it. You don't buy a pie. You haven't money for a pie, but you stand near enough to smell it, and sometimes that has to be enough. Robert is with you. He's found a boy he knows from the greengrocer's errand running, and they're doing what 11-year-old boys do in markets. Circling things, picking them up, setting them down, moving with the restless energy of people whose bodies are at an awkward stage of being asked to work like adults, while insisting on the physical freedom of children. You stand and watch the market move. There's a woman at the second-hand dress stall who's holding up a green dress. Actually green. A proper dark green wool. Not the dingy by default colour that everything in your building gradually becomes, and examining it with the focused assessment of a woman who knows exactly what she's looking for. She turns it, checks the seams, holds the sleeve against her arm to gauge length. She haggles. She's a practised haggler, the kind where you can see the number she's willing to pay from 20 feet away, and the number she's starting at are completely different, and both parties know this, and the process is a kind of performance they've both agreed to perform. She gets it for 6pence. She folds it over her arm and walks away with it, and her back has a different quality from before she had the dress. Something more decided, something more present, a good piece of cloth. It matters in this city. It matters in ways that are not only about warmth or function. It matters because of what people read when they look at you, because the language of clothing in Victorian England is explicit, and everyone speaks it fluently. The green dress says something different than the grey dress. You're different on the street depending on what you're wearing, and everyone knows this. And it is simultaneously deeply unfair and completely true. You think about your own dress, the one you're wearing, the one you sleep in, the one you've been wearing every day for. You don't think about how long. The grey-brown wool that was a darker grey when it was new. The hem that you've let down twice. The stitches showing. The patch on the right elbow. You're clean. Your mother insists on cleanliness to the extent that the single basin and the cold water and the limited soap allow. You're as clean as your circumstances permit. But the dress is the dress, and you know what it says. And standing here in the market, watching the woman walk away with her green cloth, you know the exact distance between what you have and what you'd need to close that gap. And the distance is not enormous in pounds and shillings. It's maybe 4 or 5 shillings, the price of a second-hand dress from a stall like this one. And 4 or 5 shillings is an immense distance when you make 2 1/4 pence per gross of matchboxes. This is not self-pity. I want to be clear about that. This is arithmetic. The same arithmetic you do every morning before you get up. Run in the numbers of the week, the numbers of the year. The arithmetic that tells you the distance between where you are and where you'd need to be, and that you carry this knowledge not as a wound but as a map of the terrain of your life. Robert comes back with a piece of bread someone gave him from a stall, a slightly stale roll, given to him by a baker who had too much. He breaks it in half and gives you the larger half without being asked to. You eat it standing up, watching the market. A dog pushes through the crowd at knee-height, nose down, purposeful. A cart tries to get through a gap that's not quite a cart width, and the crowd parts for it with the collective, grudging compliance of people who have done this 10,000 times. A child cries somewhere in the middle of it all, not in distress, just in the ordinary protest of a child who is being made to go somewhere they don't want to go. The city is happening around you. It's happening in every direction, at full volume, in every language. You hear English and Irish and Yiddish and something that might be Italian, the market drawing everyone. The market being one of the places in London that doesn't sort itself by origin or background, that requires only presence and the will to buy or sell. You stand in the middle of it for another 10 minutes, just being present in it, and then you turn and go back. The summer comes, and summer in Whitechapel is its own kind of endurance. The heat in a room that is 12 feet by 10 feet, with 8 people in it, and a fire that has to be kept going for cooking and for the iron that your mother sometimes uses for pressing. The heat becomes structural. It's not weather, it's environment. The walls hold it. The floor holds it. The air doesn't move unless you open the window, and opening the window lets in the street smell which in summer is more aggressive than winter by a considerable margin. London in summer smells of its own enormous population living in its own inadequate plumbing, and this smell in the streets around Whitechapel rises with the temperature the way bread rises in an oven. By July, the heat and the smell are inseparable. You carry both of them through your days like a second coat. Your mother moves the matchbox work to the morning before the heat is at its worst. By afternoon, the pace doesn't set right. The heat makes it tacky and slow, and the boxes won't close cleanly, and you end up redoing work which is unaffordable. The morning hours, in the brief coolness before 10 o'clock, are the productive hours. After that you work slower. The baby Tommy is walking now. 8 steps before he falls, 9, then 10, then, sometime in late June, across the full length of the room in a straight, wobbling, intensely concentrated line from the bed to the coal sacks, where William catches him. William laughs. It's the first time in months you've heard William actually laugh. Not the polite acknowledgement that functions as a laugh, but the real thing, startled out of him by a baby making it across a room on his own 2 feet. He picks Tommy up and holds him at arm's length and says again, with a grin that is for that moment entirely the face of the 16-year-old boy he is. Tommy, delighted with the audience, immediately sits down and refuses to perform on demand. The jaw is not gone. The swelling comes and goes. There are 2 more visits to Dr. Warren over the summer, 2 more shillings from the locked box, 2 more adjustments to the week's arithmetic. But William is still working. His wages are still coming in. The factory has not let him go. You add this to the things you carry without discussion. Autumn. The first cool day of September comes in on a northwest wind that moves through the building like a visitor who knows the place. Everywhere at once, into every gap, finding the cracks that the summer plugged with heat and reopening them. You feel it through the window frame, through the gap under the door, through the floor where the boards don't quite meet. This is the signal. The body knows it, the room knows it. Coal will be needed again soon. The fire will need to burn through the night again. The arithmetic shifts. Your mother goes to the chandler's shop on a Saturday afternoon, and you go with her. Which is unusual. She usually sends you alone or sends Robert. But today she goes herself, which means this is a conversation she needs to have directly. Mr. Croft is behind the counter. The shop is the same as always. Same smell, same packed ceiling, same light. Your mother greets him. She asks about the winter coal rate, about whether the price has changed since last year, about whether there's a better arrangement to be made for someone buying regularly. Mr. Croft is a fair man, within his constraints. He can't lower his prices much. His own margins are not large. He's not exploiting anyone. He's running a neighbourhood business that is itself subject to the same economic pressures as his customers at a different scale. But he can offer something. A small reduction per half bucket if your mother commits to buying from him, and only from him through the winter. Your mother commits. She shakes his hand. She buys today's coal. On the way back, with the bucket between you, she takes one side of the handle, you take the other. She says, "You watched what I did." It's not a question. "Yes," you say. "Good," she says. You carry the coal up the stairs between you, skipping the broken step. In October, Agnes passes a threshold at the ragged school that the teacher marks with a small ceremony. She's moved up from the beginners group to the advanced group, meaning she can read well enough to help teach the younger children the letters. The teacher gives her a pencil, a real pencil, not a chalk stub. She brings it home and shows it to everyone individually, which takes some time given the number of people in the room, each of whom is expected to examine the pencil with appropriate seriousness. Your father holds it in his large rope-roughened hand and turns it, and the look on his face is the same look from before, that open pride, the pride that doesn't know what to do with itself. "You'll teach me," he says, not quite a question. Agnes looks at him. She's 9 years old, and your father is 36, and this is a large thing she's been asked, and she takes its measure carefully. "Saturday evenings," she says, "when the work is done." He nods. That Saturday evening, after supper, after the fire is banked and the boxes are set aside and the room is as quiet as it gets, Agnes sits beside your father on the edge of the bed with a piece of brown paper and the pencil, and she shows him how to make the letters. He holds the pencil like a tool he hasn't been given the right grip for yet. He makes the letters large and effortful, each one a concentrated act. His handwriting, if you can call it that, is rough and enormous. the letters not quite sitting on any line. But they are letters. They are unmistakably the letters she's showing him. Your mother watches from across the room. She's pretending to be working. She's not working. Winter again. Here you are, full circle. The cold comes back. The damp wall, the ice on the water in the basin, the grey light, the coal and the fire and the thin blanket. But some things are different. Your father can write his name. More than that, actually. He's been practicing in the evenings on scraps of paper, and he can write 10 words now, maybe 15, the words he uses most, the words that matter in his life. His name, your mother's name, Marsh, the family, work. Docs, the numbers 1 through 10. He will never be a reader. The architecture isn't there, at 36, to build it from nothing. But he has 15 words, and 15 words is 15 more than he had in October. Agnes teaches Robert next. Robert learns faster, with the urgency of a boy who has understood, from watching his sister, that reading is a different kind of currency. The matchboxes continue. Score, paste, fold, press, set. The arithmetic continues. The credit book balance goes up and down, never clearing entirely, but not growing past the point of management. The rent gets paid on Fridays. Not always easily, not always completely on the first attempt, but it gets paid. The locked box sometimes has a little in it and sometimes has almost nothing. When it has a little, your mother closes it with the same expression and says nothing. When it has almost nothing, she closes it with the same expression and says nothing. The box keeps its own counsel. You're lying on the mattress, the February cold back again, the thin blanket doing what it can. Agnes warm against your left side. You're 14 now. This has happened while you were busy with the boxes and the water and the stairs. The year moved through you, and you moved through it. And on the other side of it, you're older, and different in ways that are sometimes hard to name. You still fold the boxes, your hands still crack in winter, the fingertips still bleed, but you're faster now. You've shaved 30 seconds off each box without trying to. The body just knows, after enough repetitions, where to go without being asked. Your gross count is up. Your mother has started assigning you the more complex work, the double-sided boxes with the additional fold, the ones that take more time per unit but pay slightly more. She did this without announcing it. She simply put the more complex cards in your pile one morning, and you worked through them without asking why. And at the end of the day she checked them and said nothing, which was her version of approval. You know things now that you didn't know a year ago. You know how to read a credit book balance at a glance, and know whether it's safe. You know which mornings at the pump are fastest, Tuesdays and Saturdays, for reasons you've never fully understood but which hold consistently. You know that the tallow smell from below is slightly better when Mr. Hensley renders in the afternoons rather than the evenings. Something about the building's air circulation. You know how to get from Flower and Dean Street to Petticoat Lane Market by 2 different routes, the quick one and the safe one, and when to use each. You know that the 3rd floor hallway is where the draft lives in winter, and that moving through it fast is the best strategy. You know the broken step. You know the weight of a full water bucket and how to shift it to carry longer. You know how to start a fire from almost nothing. You know how to fold a cardboard box in the dark by feel when the candle's gone. These are things nobody taught you in a lesson. These are things the room taught you, the building taught you, the year taught you, the repetition and the necessity of it all. This is knowledge, yours, built from the floor up. Outside the street is quiet. It's after 11 now. The gin palace has gone to its late-night hum. The taverns are getting there. A man's voice somewhere, singing something. Not well, but with conviction. The singing of someone who has decided to be cheerful and is implementing this decision. The building breathes around you. The boards, the walls, the pipes. The Pierce family next door. Clara Pierce, who was sick last winter and got better, now making her characteristic nighttime sounds. Small movements, the settling of a child in sleep. Mrs. Boyle, 2 floors above, who will be making her too much porridge in the morning. Mr. Hensley in the cellar, his tallow operation cold and quiet at this hour. 50 people, more or less, in this building. All of them breathing. All of them running the arithmetic in the dark, in the way that people run it. Not consciously, not in numbers exactly, but in the body's language of tension and release, of the breath held and then let go when the worst scenario doesn't materialize. All of them trying to make it to Friday, to make it to spring, to make it. Most of them will, most days, most weeks, most years. The machinery holds. It holds because of the work that happens in these rooms, in these invisible hours, the piecework and the dock work and the errand running and the fire building and the water carrying and the box folding. The city needs all of it. The great commercial empire that runs from the Royal Exchange down to the East India wharves and out across the globe needs all of this at its base. Needs these rooms and these hands and these very specific, very real, very exhausted people to be here every morning, ready to carry the things that need carrying. They are here every morning. They are here tonight, asleep in the dark, in the cold, in the damp, dreaming whatever they dream. You are one of them. You're one of the 50, one of the thousands, one of the hundreds of thousands who make the city run and who are not in the histories, mostly, except as a kind of statistical mass, a labouring poor, a category in a census report, a subject of concern for reformers who write pamphlets about conditions they have visited exactly once. You are not a category. You are Eliza Marsh, 14 years old, Whitechapel, 1857. You know the broken step. You know the matchbox. You know your sister's elbow and your brother's careful jaw, and your father's big hands holding a pencil for the first time. You know this room. Let it be enough tonight. Let the cold wall be just a wall. Let the damp patches be just the building's old age, its decades of trying to keep the outside out. Let the bucket in the corner be simply what it is, a practical object performing a practical function, no more and no less than the room requires. Let the weight of the week lift for these hours. You've carried the water, you've built the fire, you've made the boxes, measured them in pence, added them to the week's column, you've run the errand, you've listened at the wall and decided the child next door is sleeping rather than worsening and committed to that interpretation, because it's the one that lets you rest. You've done what needed doing. Tomorrow there is more of it. There is always more of it. The arithmetic never reaches a final sum. It just rolls forward, week into week, the numbers never quite settling into safety, but never quite tipping into catastrophe, held in that particular tension that is the texture of your life. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is the warmth of your sister's arm against yours, the low red pulse of the banked coal, the faint sound of a man singing something on the street below, still singing, still committed to his cheerfulness, his voice coming up through the glass and the damp walls into the room where 8 people are sleeping. Let his voice be part of the dark. Let the sounds of the building be sounds, not signals. Let your hands rest. The cracks in your fingertips will hurt less by morning. They always do. Some overnight mystery of healing. That means the body of the night is more forgiving than the body of the day. Your eyes are already going. The singing man has rounded the corner now, his voice fading. The building settles another fraction of an inch into its own foundations. The coal shifts in the grate, a small red adjustment. In 200 years they'll have torn this building down. They'll have torn it down and built something else and torn that down too, probably. The streets will be different. The smells entirely different. The coal smoke gone, replaced by other smells. The tallow gone, the cesspit gone. The whole invisible infrastructure of 1857. London dissolved into something that would be unrecognisable to you. The neighbourhood will still be there. Whitechapel will still be there. Still crowded. Still alive. Still the place the city puts the things it needs but doesn't want to look at too closely. Different people. Different sounds. Same compressed quarters. Same economics of the cramped room. The broken step will be gone. Some other broken step will have taken its place in some other building, known by some other foot. But the knowledge of the broken step, the way a body learns a route, learns a room, learns the specific weight of a water bucket and the exact pressure needed to start a fire from cold ash, that doesn't change. That's human knowledge, the oldest kind, accumulated in the hands and feet and back and eyes. It predates literacy. It predates coins. It predates every system that the systems have built on top of it. Your mother has it. Her mother had it. The woman at the pump has it. The man at the dock gate. The girl at the ragged school. The teacher with the ink on her fingers. All of them carrying this knowledge in their bodies, doing the work that keeps everything else standing. The people who write the histories don't always know what to do with that kind of knowledge. It doesn't fit neatly on a page. It doesn't produce archives. It doesn't leave much behind. But it was here. Every morning before the city was properly awake, it was here. Building the fire, carrying the water, getting it wrong sometimes, getting it right most times, learning the difference, keeping it all running. Sleep, Eliza. Your hands can stop now. The fold, the press, the set. Let it go. It'll be there in the morning. The morning will have its own arithmetic. For now, the dark, the warmth against your left side, the slow breathing of 7 other people who love you in the way that this room allows, obliquely, practically, through the broken step and the half-given bread and the extra porridge that was always too much by design. You are warm enough. You are here. You are held, not softly, not in any way that the word comfortable applies to, but held by the walls and the floor and the particular geometry of this place that is yours. The city hums beneath you, above you, around you. Let it hum. Let the sounds blur together into the single note of a place that is alive, that was alive before you were born and will be alive long after. The laughter and the coughing and the singing man and the bells of the churches counting out the hours that nobody needs to count. Let your thoughts slow, the matchbox half finished, the water for morning, the broken step, the pencil, Agnes's letters, the green dress at the market, William's laugh, the fire. Let them soften. Let them become images rather than tasks. Let the images become shapes. Let the shapes become just the dark behind your eyes, which is nothing, which is the best thing, which is the only rest available to you, and it is real rest. It is true rest. It is yours. You've earned this. Take it. Good night.